So Ralf, it was really a pleasure for having you today as our keynote speaker here, speaking about prediction, forecast, estimation. I think this has an impact in our projects. What do you think is the most important thing to do?
First, to understand the difference between forecasting and estimating, forecasts and estimations. Estimations are what usually are asked for by product owners, customers, people concerned with budgets, timelines, and so on. And it's just a single number, usually given as a single number, as a gut feeling, and it's asked from developers. Developers should know that's common. The common assumption should know how long it's going to take until 10 features or whatever are completed. And that a developer cannot really answer.
So what do you suggest to do?
Right. We have to move away from the gut feeling. We have to move away from a single number. We have to move to forecasting, which, like weather forecasting, is based on factual data. So we have to start actually measuring our delivery times for features and issues, whatever you call it. And if there's a considerable amount of historical data, which is not really large, maybe 20, 30 of such data points, you can start calculating, simulating possible futures for the next 10 issues, the next 20 stories, whatever is on your plate. And that not the developer is doing, but whoever wants to know the forecast or the prediction. And that's based on factual data, and so you can really argue about that. About feelings, it's hard to argue.
Yeah. This sounds pretty much you need a team of software developers which are constantly working together. But in our projects, we often have changing teams, people coming newly together, building a new group, for instance, in the context of an implementation project. So is this valid there too? What can you do to do such a forecasting?
I think the important term here is variation. The higher the variation, desto harder it is make to any prediction about the future. Of course. It's like with the weather. If the weather is changing starkly, then what can you say about next day's temperatures or precipitation or whatever? But if you can rely on a basic climate, when you can rely on seasons, recurring seasons on top of the basic climate, you can start make predictions. You can do forecasts. And the usual farmer's rule is maybe just a gut feeling. A very, very condensed experience. But if you look at the weather forecast on TV, that's based on models, simulation models. And that's very accurate. I mean, if intercontinental flights are relying on that, well, we can be pretty sure there's lots of security baked into that for us too.
So this sounds very scientific. I mean, how easy would it be for me as a team lead who wants to do this forecasting to set up such a things and calculate and make such a simulation?
There are a couple of tools out there who support you in that. You have to basically start gathering data, and you can use like any issue tracking tool, I guess, whether that's Jira or the GitHub issues or whatever. You can export or TFS from Microsoft. You can export historical data on when did work on a certain item start and when did it finish, and if you have a clean process around that, where you really stick to the policies, you always finish what you started, you can start tracking this. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And the calculations, the simulation, the math is pretty trivial. That's like 100 lines of code. You can write that yourself, do it as an exercise. And maybe then you can even start using Excel for visualizations. That's not that difficult. If you really want it, that's not depending on a huge budget.
Okay, so thank you very much for being with us here today. Just one more question. I mean, this was all valid for ABAP community, for C# community, for any software development community. Since you are somehow a kind of outside person to our community, what are your observations in the area of ABAP development? Is there anything you have observed you would like to give as a feedback, as an advice, as a hint, or is this just alike as what you see in other communities too?
let's say there's three aspects I can look at. There's the technology aspect, there's the process aspect, and the the business, the context aspect. And in all three aspects, the ABAP community is differing, which made it for quite some time hard for me to work with ABAP developers at all. Technology-wise, I'd say they are not really on par with what's going on in the world in terms of programming languages and platforms. Process-wise, agility, which is now 20 years old, or 25 years, however you count, hasn't arrived in the ABAP world as much as has it arrived in the Java or Ruby or C# world. So there's quite some room for improvement process-wise. And then, and maybe that's the root cause of all of that, it's very, very, very business-driven. Very, very budget-driven, very, very manager-driven. And that's not that other communities are not driven by budgets, but it's even more so here. So I find it harder for ABAP teams to change their habits for the better, for long-term high productivity, than other teams. Thanks.
So if I want to change this as a company or as a consultancy, what would be your advice?
Like the one thing to do?
Or the two or the three?
The one thing to do is you, as a company, you have to earn money, yes. You have to understand the connection between pressure on functionality, the tangible behavior of software, the connection between pressure and quality, the quality behind the functionality. So the higher the pressure, you more you point to the budget, the less you let developers do what we nowadays know that they should be doing, like automated tests and a process like Scrum, and do refactorings and reviews and all the stuff which is maybe labeled as clean code development. You have to understand that you don't let them do that, you pay later. It really has an interest rate to that. Technical debt, I don't like that term very much, but there is some truth to it. So if you take a shortcut today, you're going to pay tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much, Ralf, for being with us, for the insights you've given us, and hopefully we will one time see you again at an Inside Track. And also for our audience outside, I want to invite you to go to the SAP Inside Track Hamburg webpage. There you can find also the slides of Ralf's talk today and get more in detail to know what it's all about forecasting.